Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Rick Brinkman.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Rick Brinkman. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, this is called using your mind on purpose. And you can change your reactions to anybody and anything. And one of the simplest ways to do that is something called modeling. You ask yourself, who would have the quality that I really want in that situation or with that particular person? Now, without realizing what I was doing as a technique, I grew up in New York City. I wanted to be more loving and forgiving. I said to myself, well, who could be more loving and forgiving here in New York City? And I thought, God, there's a model of love and forgiveness. So I started to pretend to be God in New York. And it was great. All of a sudden, great side effect, I was no longer bothered by red lights or traffic. So there I was at an intersection, peaceably waiting, surveying the kingdom. Light turns green, out I go. A taxi runs a light, bam, hits my car, spins me around, knocks my glasses off. That was a good catch, huh? And I'm trying to pretend to be God. So he gets out of his car, I get out of my car, he looks at me, I look at him, and I said unto him, go forth and multiply. They're not quite those words. I'm not sure they ever got that joke in Hong Kong. Singapore thought it was hysterical.
Before we do anything about it, we do have to stop and ask ourselves, well, is it worth it? Is the amount of time worth it? Is the energy worth it? Is the job worth it? Is the relationship worth it? And if the answer is no, then you can leave, or maybe you get them to leave. In fact, in doing research for the book Dealing with Relatives, we found geography was the #1 coping strategy. And see, you know what makes a relative tougher to deal with is because there's a feeling there is no choice. I mean, you don't get to choose your parents, you don't choose your siblings. Yeah, you choose your spouse. Technically, they're not a relative. And then the spouse comes along with bonus people that you have to deal with. But the truth is, you always have a choice. You could do nothing and suffer. You could leave or get them to leave. Or you could change your attitude, and or you could change your behavior.
Consider, why do people act the way they do? And in order to do that, I want to introduce you to the lens of understanding. First of all, very important, this is not personality typing. If you think it's personality, you're going to inadvertently lead yourself astray. It's very important as a conscious communicator, you separate personality from behavior. See, behavior is fluid and it's constantly changing. One minute person's normal, then they blow up and throw a tantrum, then they withdraw and they're quiet for a while, then they're normal, then they're whining, then there's something else. Behavior changes according to context, where are we, what's going on, and relationship, who we're with. You could know somebody who seems to be a bully most of the time, they're pushy, they're aggressive. You wouldn't believe what a wimp they can turn into in a different context, or maybe in a different relationship. My wife would tell you she has to come to a seminar to hear me speak. Because in most social situations, I'll be a nothing person. Of course, I explained to her, honey, I'm a professional. You have to pay me. Those of you with children, your child ever come back from a neighbor says, oh, how polite and helpful they are. My child? Different context, different relationship, different behavior. So back to personality versus behavior. That which we think is someone's personality is nothing more than a very big generalization we've made, and our generalization is based on the behavior that we have observed. But what we have to keep in mind is we don't observe people in all their habitats. Even the people we're closest to, we only know about this much of what they're capable of. We always have to assume so much more. many of you remember a show called Candid Camera? All right, for anybody who doesn't, they would create a really strange situation, have a hidden camera, and see what people would do when they wander into it. Well, when they got off of network TV and they got onto videotape, they created a whole outrageous version. They once took over a doctor's waiting room. They hired actors and actresses to sit around the waiting room, reading magazines, waiting for the doctor, except these people were dressed only in their underwear. Real patients would come in, look around, and in 30 seconds undress, hang up their clothes, pick up a magazine, wait for the doctor. You'll try it at your next stand-up meeting, see what happens. Nobody will bother you. I see it, it must be so. 38%, the way it sounds, is less, but it's not less important. In fact, tone of voice is taken more personally than any other part of our communication. 7% words, that's a lot less, but then again, it's not less important. We all know that one word can be a buzzword or a trigger. You know, I noticed that in airports, they're trying to figure out, all right, what should you say, 7%? How should it be said, 38%? That keeps people from leaving cars in loading zones in front of terminals once and for all. Now, traditionally, it's been voice of authority, which is a man who says, "Please do not park in the loading zone. Violators will be cited and towed." A lot of people aren't intimidated by that. In Burbank, California, a very nice woman named Marilyn says, "Please do not park in the loading zone. Violators will have to be cited and towed. We thank you for helping keep traffic moving. We'd rather see you leave with a smile than a ticket." She's more friendly, she explains it to you. It's California. What works really well in Portland, Oregon, where I've been living for the last 30 years, is a woman comes on and says, "It would support the environment if you didn't leave your car here." And works really well in New York City, in my hometown. Guy comes on and says, "Yo, pal, you leave your car, it's gonna be stolen." 55, 38, 7, it's all important. What the numbers are really telling us is what will happen if we give a mixed message. Here's another thing that relates to tone. Anybody have a misunderstanding on email? All right, now what's going on there? All right, there's no 55%. Technically, there's no 38%. It's just all a bunch of 7%. But what that allows us to do is hallucinate freely as to how we think the other person sounds when they say it. Our hallucinations are based on our blood sugar curve, our stress level, and everything we've got going on in that moment. Now, anytime you lose channels of communication like that, you're losing a lot of important information, but you always get something in return. And you want to take advantage of that as a conscious communicator. You know, like, let's get on the phone with people. I was doing a seminar for Adobe for the tech support department. One of the tech supporters says, "Oh, if he's on the phone with a client and he takes anything personally, he gets out of his chair and he starts doing yoga." Still working with the client. Because when he sees one of these postures, he can't take it personally. Now, in a face-to-face interaction, you suddenly go, you give people trout mouth, huh? Coming back to written communication, what you're given in return is time is on your side. It's not a real interactive medium. So go back to the old days in a time of yesteryear when the earth is still cooling. And if we're going to write, we have to use a typewriter. So much time was built into the process that one of two things was going to happen. One is we might not bother. It was way too much work. So we're more likely to be interactive. And two, if we did bother, we would have so much time, we would arrive at other points in our blood sugar curve. We would read, we would reread, we would edit. But in comes the digital age. And so part of the seduction, it's quick and easy. Not to mention we have a big volume to deal with, so we get in a real get-it-done mode. So we read quickly, we write quickly, we edit sparingly. Pshing! Misunderstanding. You ever reread an email the next day? Have you noticed that there's sentences in there that were not in there the day before? You know why that is? Because email elves sneak in at night and add to it. Why that is because we can pay attention to 7, give or take 2 things at one time. We read something, it triggers us off in thought. We read unconsciously. If you're writing emails to humanoid life forms, you want to take that into account. Look, is something you're about to say going to send somebody off in thought and distract them from getting the next line? So you always got to look at this from the other person's perspective. It's not about you communicating it. It's about, did you land the communication? That's your goal as a conscious communicator. Where I want to finish here today is with another attitude adjustment, and this is called perspective. The quicker you put a person or situation in perspective, the easier they're going to be to deal with. My mother always kept the book on her shelf, Mengele, the Nazi doctor worked on twins at Auschwitz. She always kept that on her shelf because here she was a twin at Auschwitz. Here she is in the ghetto before being sent there. And if she ever felt bad about anything, she'd pull out the book, read a paragraph or two, and suddenly the present circumstances don't seem so bad. 1945, the Russian front is advancing very fast. The Germans are very fearful of the Russians. There's a big retreat, military and civilian, heading west towards Allied forces. At this point, she's part of 1,000 girls they take on a death march through the snow. You stop on a so-called rest break and dig a ditch in the road to slow the Russian tanks down. Every 2 weeks, they shoot you, no time to waste, but on this march, you realize your life is in her hands. And how she realized that was by giving up. They stopped the camp one night. She broke down, started to cry. German officer says, "Was ist los?" She said, "I can't take it anymore. I'm starving. I'm freezing. I want you to kill me." He tears his sandwich in half. He hands her half and says, "Listen, the war is almost over. Now is not the time to die. You can make it. Now watch yourself. All right, you go stand guard in front of that fire." Next day, she woke up and saw things that were there before, hadn't noticed. When they walked through deserted German towns and the road bent in a crescent, there would be a clear blind spot. She noticed when they stopped the camp that night, there were many minutes at a time, many times over, where the guards were not to be seen. There were only 70 guards, 1,000 girls. At one of these moments, she just got up and walked away. They were in a field. She went into this deserted town, found a house, scratched the frost off the window, sees a Christmas tree inside with apples, breaks in, eats an apple, and before she could feel good she's gotten away, she realized she's left her 2 sisters there, friend. They're going to think she's dead. This could be the straw that breaks camel's back for them. They can't keep this up much longer. What's she going to do? Then she thought, I could not live the rest of my life knowing maybe I could have done something. If I could do this once, I can do this twice. So she sneaks back, finds them, explains the 2 opportunities. Next day they're marching, they get to a crescent, they scatter. This time she finds a barrel, waits until nightfall, and when she comes out, silence. Nobody's around. That's when she realizes, I'm free, just like that. All things pass. Sister, friend, wonderful reunion. Then you realize, hey, we're freezing, let's go indoors. They go in a house, and they find a place that's decorated for Christmas. They find a table set for 4 as if they're expected, with fine china. They found food already prepared in the kitchen. They just sat down to dinner. At the end of the meal, she looks at the fine hand-painted china, Rosenthal. Then she thought, I didn't live to wash dishes. They threw the plates out the window, went on to the next house. She said she always regretted not taking service for 2. Ricky, it was Rosenthal. I tell you this because perspective happens right between your ears. If you think somebody's difficult, you're right. If you think you get a result with somebody, you're right. When you're up against somebody tough, you breathe, you weigh it against other things, and the energy comes back to do what it takes. So now's the time to go out there and do what it takes, because you make a difference. Everything you do or don't do makes a difference. The choice of the German soldier 68 years ago has come through time to this moment of time. So I wish you to go out there, be conscious communicators, and when you're with people, try to always leave them a positive message. And if you can't think of a positive message, give them 2 negative messages. My math teacher said that would come in handy, and it did. If I can leave one last thought, let it be this: life is not a test, it's an actual emergency. Thank you and good luck.